comparison. There's this mind battle going on where you're basically, looking at others and you're trying to constantly measure yourself against them. Hey, friend, welcome back to the podcast. This is part 3 of a series that God really impressed upon my heart, or put in my heart for me to record on ways that like unhealed trauma and pain are perhaps showing up in your business, how you can spot them and what you can do about them. Okay. So just quickly to recap, this is part 3. So the first part 1 was I went over 5 different ways that I can really tell when women that I'm coaching have things from their past, probably. I mean, more than likely it's in the past, it's not in the future. So it's things that they've gone through, experienced, whether it's pain, big and hard things, or whether it's trauma that they still need to deal with because it's showing up in business. Things like they over explain, they over apologize, they work for free, they don't want to show their face on social media. I go through like 5 different things over in part 1. So go listen to that first if you haven't. Part 2, I just go through one thing, and it is self-sabotage, because I had a lot of information on self-sabotage and what self-sabotage is and what it isn't, and also how you can stop doing it, how you can spot it, because a lot of times I'll be coaching women and they're like, now I don't really self-sabotage. And I'm like, but wait, you just launched something 6 months ago that was really successful and you haven't done it again. How come? Or you had a Facebook ad that was working really well and you turned it off. What's all that about? Or every time you make a little money in your business, you give it all away. Explain that to me. Those are like just a couple of a ton of examples I give about self-sabotage in business, which we've got to figure out that that's what we're doing. First, we have to recognize it, and then we've got to get to the root of it, and then we've got to let God heal it. We've got to get past it. Okay. So then I'm swinging back around here on part 3, and I'm going through 4 last ways that are indicators to me sometimes that women still have work to do. And the truth is, I still have work to do. We all still have work to do. And so I'm going to talk about 4 different things today that I still spot in myself and I still spot in other women that I would say are signs that there is pain or unhealed trauma in that someone needs to deal with because it's really affecting their business. Now, disclaimer at the beginning again, I am not a therapist. I am not a counselor. I'm not a trauma specialist. I'm just a girl who happens to love Jesus. I want to be obedient to the call of God in my life. And specifically today, while I was in church, I felt like the Lord wanted me to really put together this podcast series. And I didn't really realize when I really started laying it out this afternoon that it would be 3 parts, but yet here we are, and we're just going with it. And I'm just believing that, God operates in such incredible ways that someone is getting some healing somewhere. And even if it's only one woman who has an aha moment and gets the healing she needs, then my work here will have been worth it. So part 3, I want to talk first of all about imposter syndrome. Now, can I just say I hate the terminology imposter syndrome anyway? Can I Google this? I'm curious what Google says imposter syndrome is. Okay. So hang on just a second. Imposter. Okay. What is imposter syndrome definition? Let's see what Google says. Google says it's the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's efforts or skills. Okay, hang on just a second here. I don't know that I love that. I mean, I guess it's fine. What's the best definition of imposter syndrome? Let's read this again. It's the physiological phenomenon where a person doubts their abilities. I like this better. I can already tell you that. Doubts their abilities, their skills, or their accomplishments so much that they feel like they're going to be exposed as a fraud or undeserving of their success. Here's why I like this one better. Because the first definition that I read to you is a person who has already achieved success and is wondering if they deserve it. And yes, I think that could be one form of imposter syndrome, but that's like after, right? So that's like you've had some success and then you feel like a fraud. This one, the one that I think is is the one I just read to you, the physiological phenomenon where a person doubts their abilities, skills, or accomplishments. Like that's prior to success so much they feel like they're going to be exposed as a fraud or undeserving of any success that they may have coming up. So I do think that that is a better definition. So we're going to go with that. Okay. Here's what I know to be true. When I'm coaching women, I will see them a lot of times be feeling this emotion of like they're an imposter, even though that's not what they say. They may not say to me, Jen, I'm struggling with imposter syndrome. Because again, I hate that word. I don't know why, or that phrase, imposter syndrome. It's weird to me. But what they will say is things like, I don't know, like, who am I to do this? Or who do I think that I am, that I can add anything more to the health and wellness industry when there's already so much, or whatever, whatever. So they won't say necessarily like that that's what they're experiencing is imposter syndrome. But there's this internal comparison. There's this mind battle going on where you're basically, looking at others and you're trying to constantly measure yourself against them. And so I do think that a lot of times this comes from a childhood where you were very overlooked, or you were very compared, or you were never affirmed. And before you're like, nope, that didn't happen to me at all. I want those of you that are parents maybe to even think of this from a parenting perspective, okay? There are just some kids that flat out require more attention, whether good or negative, than others. And if you're raising more than one child, you've probably seen this. There are also some children that just need more verbal affirmation than others. I have one of my kiddos of our four whose love language is words of affirmation. And then I have three whose love language is gifts. They're expensive. But you don't just have one, right? I mean, we all feel love from, I think, all five of the different love languages. If you don't know what the five love languages are, they are words of affirmation, gifts, quality time, acts of service, and physical touch. Okay, so anyhow, if you are or were a child who really needed words of affirmation and you never received those, or maybe it was at a minimum for maybe for your siblings, that was fine, but you did not get something that you needed. And so I do think that that can show up when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and you're a businesswoman and you're feeling the need for that constant affirmation from somewhere. You probably learned at a very early age to like scan a room, scan the golf course, scan the spelling bee participants, and determine like where you're going to measure up or where you're going to fall short, and put your worth into that scaling. And so what it ends up looking like in business is it looks like somebody that's doing what I call, the doom scrolling. I mean, not just me call it that, everybody calls it that, where you're scrolling through Instagram and you're just feeling lousier and lousier and lousier. It's because you are looking at everybody else and their, highlight reels and their winning shots, and it looks like they're winning, and you instinctively feel behind, you instinctively feel inadequate, you instinctively feel less than. By the way, turn off Instagram. Okay. This shows up in business when you don't launch a course, even though you took my program on how to launch. You have been someone in my coaching group for years. You've been maybe in my inner circle for years. You're surrounded by other people who launch their businesses, launch their products, launch their coaching, classes or what have you. And you haven't done it yet because the internal dialogue you're having with yourself is that somebody's always doing it better. This is what I want to do, but what do I have that's any different? What can I say that's new? What are other people going to think? A lot of times I think that the people who are really struggling with imposter syndrome will think that success is for like other people. It's for other women. It's for other women who look to act and behave differently than they do. Maybe they're more confident, they're more polished, they're more poised, they're therefore more worthy. And so these women that really struggle with imposter syndrome, like they disqualify themselves before they even start, before they even try. And I can tell you as a mom, to four different children, all wired very differently. It's a bummer when I see this like showing up in some of my kids. And so if you are someone who's constantly like having your joy, or let me just say this, allowing your joy to be stolen, because comparison is the thief of joy, is the saying, right? So when you're comparing yourself, even if you never say it out loud, but if mentally you are lining yourself up against other people in your industry, it will prevent you from moving forward. It will prevent your business from growing. And so get to the bottom of that. Please get to the bottom of that. I was talking to somebody a while back about back when I used to triathlon a lot in my 40s. And my last triathlon, I was 46 and I'm getting ready to turn 54. So I haven't competed in many years. But I did 10 triathlons from the age of 40 to 46 and enjoyed every single bit of that. And I was thinking the other day, like, gosh, I can't even wrap my head around training my body like that again. Not that I was super serious, not that I was super good, but there is a discipline that comes with it. Just so you make sure you don't die on the swim and then the bike and then the run. You know what I mean? And so but I was talking to somebody about like goal setting and things like that. And we were just having a conversation about, competitiveness, et cetera. And every single time that I competed, because I'm very competitive, but I was only competing against myself. I could have cared less what all the people that were in the race with me were doing, what their times were going to be, how they finished, et cetera. I just was always competing against me, my last time, my best time, my PR, the time that I had set for myself, et cetera. Does that make sense? And because I think it's so dangerous when we look in business at everybody that's in our industries and things as our competition. You will actually go so much further in business if you will look at them as collaborators, and you as community versus competition. So there's that. Okay. Point number 8, because the first 5 were on part number 1 that I talked about. Point number 6 was all by itself on a podcast. This is point number 8. Someone who is a workaholic, someone who refuses to rest, someone who has an over-attachment to productivity in general, I always think to myself, there's some healing that probably needs to happen there. If I'm not doing something, if I'm not working, if I'm not, pressing on the gas, then I'm failing. Listen, this can come from a lot of things, but I do think, especially with those of us who are about my age, there was I don't want to call it a season, but our parents did the best they could with the information they had at the time, right? They didn't have Google, they didn't have ChatGPT, they didn't have Instagram to learn any better. So a lot of them pushed us to be hard work, hard work, hard work, hard work. Instinctively, what a lot of us internalized is long work, long work, long work. Instead of hard work, what we actually began to believe is that the amount of hours equals the amount that I'm committed. The amount of time I sit at the computer, that I sit on my laptop, that I am on my phone, like that equals my seriousness, how dedicated I am, how much I want this, etc. And I unsubscribed, by the way, to that logic, I would say 15, 20 years ago. Unsubscribe. No longer need. Take me off your list to overworking, because it is a dangerous mindset to get in, and it is usually a cover up for something else. So if this is you, if you at all like, connect with that, here's what I want you to know. It's quite possible that when you were younger, maybe you only felt loved, or you felt seen, or you received attention when you were achieving. I can remember I started fast pitch softball when I was an eighth grader. Because like that summer between eighth grade and being a freshman, a lot of times then you're playing up that summer. So I was playing as a freshman. I was in eighth grade. And I can remember the first time the coach called me up to see if I could fast pitch a softball. And I'd never fast pitched a day in my life, but I'd played softball since I was a little girl and I loved it. And the only reason the coach asked me to try pitching that day was because there'd been like 5 or other 6 girls that were on the varsity team. We were in the middle of a game that were not playing well, that had not pitched well. Hey, Jennifer, can you pitch? I don't know. Turns out I could. Turns out I wasn't half bad at it. Turns out that I ended up being an all conference pitcher, I think, for 2 years in high school. I could have played in college, not on a scholarship. I wasn't that good, but I could have played in college. I remember being in the room that day, like for tryouts at college. And first we had to do like a drug test. You had to pee in a cup. And I remember I was standing in line to test. And I didn't use any drugs, so it wasn't that. So don't let your imagination run free here. But I have my little Dixie cup that I need to go pee in. And I remember thinking, you know what? I actually think I'm done. I don't want to play in college. I want to be done. I loved it. I fast pitched softball for 5 years. I loved every single second of it. I was actually really good at it. But I just wanted college to be college. So I literally set my little Dixie cup down on the countertop and walked out. And that was fine with my parents and all the things. But back to my point, bringing this bus back around. I can remember though, I wasn't great when I first started pitching because I was young. I mean, how old are you when you're getting ready to go into college or into high school? You're 13 that year, but by the time I was a sophomore, I was getting more and more solid in terms of just consistency and being able to really like nail my mental game, which pitching is really more mental than is anything else. Then I got to be much better as a junior and a senior. And I can remember, one of my closest family members not going to games until I got good. And I can remember being on the field and looking up and seeing this person in the stands and thinking, oh, okay, they heard that I'm good. So now they want to come watch me. Interesting. Interesting. It wasn't worth the attention when I was mediocre or when I sucked in the beginning. But now that I've had a couple of no hitters, or now, that I've had my name in the paper, or now, then somebody's coming to watch. And so then if that is, your story, if you can relate to that, it's very easy to then as an adult get into like overworking and to putting in the hours and just and being into the grind and wanting to achieve, not because it's something that you necessarily have a deep desire to do, but because achieving is when you got some recognition and some attention and some love from the people that you needed when you were younger. So if you can relate to that, just know, like, I get it. I get it. If you were someone who, again, probably is about my age, you maybe were raised by parents who, again, meant well. They didn't know any better, a lot of them, but you might have been made to really feel guilty for resting or playing. And so now, anytime you want to rest, know you should rest, people tell you should rest, it feels like laziness to you. And you really got to get past that, because rest is honestly warfare. It really is. Anybody can overwork. It takes a special sort of person to go, you know what? I'm going to turn the shiz off. I am going to back up from it. I'm going to let the phone ring. I'm going to let the emails go to the inbox. I'm going to stay off social. Like, that takes so much more restraint and discipline than overworking does any day of the week. And so if you were made to feel guilty for resting, sitting down, playing as a child, if you ended up having to, become an adult at way too young of an age, it's very difficult a lot of times for you to do things that feel frivolous. And so, again, how this looks in business is you still can't like sit still without checking your email. Guilty without refreshing, your website, your Stripe or whatever. You may feel guilty for taking weekends off. I am well past this. Well past this. If you did not listen to the podcast yet about why I'm taking the entire month of July off this year, go find that podcast, because I'm taking off the entire month of July. You're listening to a podcast right now that I actually recorded in June. Okay. If you are someone who feels like you live or die by your to-do list, I understand. I have told people before, because I still use what my team calls the dinosaur planner. I still use a hard copy of a day planner. And I've used a day planner since I was 19 years old. And I have told people before, I would rather lose my purse with my wallet in it than I would my day planner. And that's pathetic, by the way. That is nothing that I should be proud of. But I love my to-do list. I love my calendar. I love productivity. But when that becomes more important to me than leaving margin for God's things that day, or leaving capacity for things to shift, or leaving time open for, deck time for coffee in the morning with Jason or my kids if they need me or whatever. Like, when that has become more important than God, than family, than anything else, then we've got an issue. Then we've got an issue. And one other thing I might just mention, if you're someone who has really resisted like automation, simplification, it's almost because like working harder feels safer to you. Because listen, there are so many systems anymore and ways of reducing, your workload, of lowering your hours for us business owners, that you should be working a lot less than what like 5 and 10 years ago we were. Things like just Chat GPT, things like my Equip 360 software that helps you put things together so easily. Like, if you're resisting things like that, you might just examine, is it because the longer I work, the harder I work, the more value I feel? And by the way, if you're interested in looking at my software, you can go to equipped360.com. And this entire month, if you're listening to this right now, in the month of July, my team is teaching on automation and processes for your business all month long while I am on a sabbatical. So if you are somebody who overworks, you really need to look at why. Point number 9. We talked a little bit in one of the previous parts of this series about control issues and micromanaging, but I really want to talk about the coming from the position of, if I don't keep it all together, it will all fall apart. Okay. If you were a child who was raised in a very chaotic or unsafe household, You learned at a very early age to grip tightly to anything that felt like you had some control over some things. And if you were, there's actually a term for this. And why can't I think of the term? It's when you are a child and you're having to basically become a parent to your parents. But if that was your situation, you may have some control issues also because control became like a coping mechanism. It was a way that you could almost self protect, and maybe not in a literal sense, but it gave you a feeling as though you were protecting yourself, siblings, one of the parents, etc. Okay. So let me tell you what this can kind of look like in business, like the control issues and things. All right. Are you someone who just you redo the things that your team does because you just need to be sure, or you just want to clean up that email a little, or you just want to reword it so it sounds a little more like you? Listen, I have done this. Okay. I've done this. If you are someone who like over obsesses over the things that really don't matter, like let's say branding colors, fonts, launch timing. I mean, yes, those things matter, but if you're somebody who is hyper focused on that in order to avoid like the bigger vision work or the bigger things, the getting it out there, the thing that's moving the actual needle, this could be like a control issue, a micromanaging issue. If you micromanage every email, graphic, or post because it's terrifying for you to let that go. If you have told yourself nobody can do it as good as I can, which by the way, they can't, it's your business. You should be able to do it the best. That doesn't mean you should be doing it alone. And so a lot of times I think when we are raised where we are not trusting of the people who we have been entrusted to, our parents, then sometimes we will almost like apply that relationship to our relationship with God. So when you can't trust the people here on earth that were supposed to take care of you, sometimes then we end up not trusting God and not trusting God with the outcome of our work, of our life. And so it's almost like you overwork and try to control things so that you can manipulate results. And so for a lot of people, especially again, if you were in a very chaotic or unsafe household growing up, control is what really helped you to maybe continue to stay safe or to help you survive your upbringing. But that doesn't work when we get to be business owners. What has to happen as a business owner is you have to start surrendering things, surrendering to Jesus, surrendering to, resting, surrendering to letting other people come alongside, letting other people do things for you, growing the team, saying yes when you don't know what's going to happen on the other side of it, hiring people that you don't know if are going to work out, understanding that we think we have so much control, friends, and we really have so little. I mean, it's almost scary when you think about how little control we actually have on this side of heaven. And so if you are someone who you jokingly call yourself a control freak and you're trying to do business and it's not working out well for you, or you keep getting stuck, I want you to examine some of the things I just talked about. Control helped at one point, but to think that it helps today as a grown human who's trying to run a business is really just a self-protection tactic that you really need to get some healing from. Okay. And the last one I want to talk about is just having a really high emotional reactivity level. So if I have somebody that is in my coaching and they come to me and they say, Jennifer, I got, a comment from somebody in my DMs the other day, and they said something about my product, or they weren't happy with my coaching. And I just shut down my website and I turned off my social media, and I don't even know if I want to do business anymore. Okay. I'm like, whoa, time out. Like, let's take a breather here. What's even happening? Because in my mind, I'm going, okay, the juice there, or not, that's not the right saying that's not appropriate. What is it Dr. Phil used to say? He used to say, make sure that the punishment fits the crime. There we go. The punishment fits the crime. And so that's probably not even appropriate anyway. I'm tired because this has been a long podcast series that I really felt like I needed to get it all done and out of my brain and to you all at once. Okay. So when literally your emotional response to something, like logically, why am I letting this steal my joy? Why do I have 100 comments on this post? Wouldn't that be nice if we did, by the way? Oh, those were the good old days of Facebook. I have 99 people supporting me, saying I'm great, saying my product's great or whatever. And one knucklehead saying something that's not even that bad. But why is it that we hone in on the one, right? Why is it that that's the only one that we can focus on? When again, 99 were for you, one was against. And a lot of times this has come from a childhood where you weren't taught to regulate your emotions, or you weren't taught that you could even feel emotions. Again, if you were in a very chaotic, unsafe home being raised, a lot of times emotions, for you to share emotions or show emotions, that was very dangerous. So you learn from an early age, push down, push down, push down. And when it's all pushed down, you push down some more, like you just like a trash compactor with your emotions. This was me, by the way. And so that's never healthy, by the way. It's not a healthy way to regulate emotions. Neither is exploding, which is the way Jason leads. I am an imploder. He's an exploder. Neither is God's best for either of us. So we've both had to try to figure out how to meet for each of us individually. Like, how do I come to a more even way of expressing emotion that is healthy? Let me give you an example. You guys want a funny example? So, Easton Allwood is getting married in just under 3 weeks. And one of the things that he wants to do is to have the mother son dance at the wedding. I am opposed to it only because it's a lot of eyes on us. I don't like that many eyes on us. And I know what you're thinking, but Jennifer, you do YouTube, you're on social media. Again, go back and listen to part one of this series where I talk about being an introvert. And so, like, to be in front of a crowd of people, just Easton and I dancing on his wedding day, I will do that every single day of the week for my kids or my husband. But I would prefer to never. Can we just say that? Okay. So we have to pick out a song, right? And I even came to Easton. This is how badly I didn't want to do the dance, and not because I don't want to dance, but again, it's just all eyes on that couple that's out there. I told Easton, if you want to do like a funny dance, like a hip hop little, like we'll learn a whole thing. I will go out there and bust a move with you. I'll bring back my dancing days. This will be a blast. We'll keep it short. We'll keep it funny. And to which he shot that down because some of those could get really cringy. And that's funny. So I was telling my best friend Laura that. She goes, Jennifer Allwood, I cannot believe you volunteered to do that. I'm like, I know. That's how badly I don't just want to do like a slow dance, because in my head, I'm like, if I get emotional, it's going to be in front of a crowd of 225 people. And as an Enneagram 3, we do not like to show emotions. It's just the way that we are wired. And so I'm trying to figure out, him and I are a song that we can dance to that's not going to trigger a lot of emotion. It's not going to be too sappy. And that doesn't sound like it was a song written for lovers. And I'm like dancing with my son because hashtag awkward, right? And so, I'm Googling top 50 mother son dances. Easton, have you heard this whole story, by the way? Easton, the groom, he edits his podcast for YouTube. So I think I told you the story earlier today. But anyway, so we're listening to different songs, and a lot of them are sad, and a lot of them are country. And not that I have anything against country, but it's not my go-to for music selection unless it's Morgan Wallen. Let me just say that, or Jelly Roll. Let me just say that. I need to see them in concert together. Anyhow, I digress. Okay, so I don't remember what song it was, but I play it yesterday, and I'm in the car just with Jason, and we're on Spotify, and I'm playing some of these different 50 songs. And it worked up a whole emotion in me. So I'm sitting in the car next to my husband who's driving. And all I do is I like reach over and grab Jason's arm. And my husband looks at me and he goes, "Oh man." And he's like, "Okay, are you okay?" Oh my God, she's showing an emotion. Like, when I tell you I'm not an emotional human, if you're in one of my coaching groups, like in my inner circle, for instance, you know that sometimes I'll cry for you guys because the Holy Spirit is just super present. By the way, I'm pretty sure I just said, "Oh my God." And so I repent for that. Sorry about that. But sometimes I will cry for my clients, but I did not cry at my own wedding. I stood there like a freaking statue, and my husband bawled his head off, and we've got it all on the video, and it's so precious how emotional he was. And I was an absolute statue. So I'm telling you that I don't catch a lot of emotion. But yesterday I'm listening to different songs for Easton and I to dance to. And I was getting like, whoa, okay. But I don't even like to cry in front of my husband, let alone like a room full of wedding people. So anyhow, I'm working on allowing myself to express emotions. It's not because I think people are going to think that I'm weak. It's because I like to maintain probably the facade of an Enneagram 3 that all things are fine. I've got all my crap together, etc. And it's just not healthy. But I've gone from, complete suppression of emotion to trying to at least express some in a really safe way. Let me take this one step further. And this is not in my notes at all, but whenever the Holy Spirit brings something to me that's not in my notes, I try to lean into that because I don't want to add too much to my notes or take away from, unless it's God. But if I've got something coming to me, I'm also like, you know what? Somebody may need to hear this. Lola, please stop barking. Lola thinks somebody needs to hear this. Come here, Lola. So, one of the things that Jason and I have been working on in our marriage is that I want to have a safe place, not only for the emotion. Hey, he's a friendly, he's been here before. Hey, Brock, hi, you can walk by. Tell Easton to have the rest of his friends go in through the garage. Love you. Okay. It's a Grimsman. Also, did I just say love you to one of Easton's friends? Okay, that could get awkward. Also, what's in your hair, baby girl? See, he was a friendly, you know him. Okay. So so Jason gives me is very, very safe place. My husband is one of the only things in the world that can bring down my nervous system, that can help me to really calm down, etc. Unless he's the one that's got it all heightened, right? But he's a very safe place for me. But one emotion that I have never felt safe to express is anger. And even with him, because since I am a de-escalator by nature, now some of you might know what I'm talking about. If you were raised in a household that was chaotic or unsafe, you could have learned at a very young age to not show any emotion, because if you escalate it all, it will escalate the entire situation and then people would not be safe. So you've learned how to de-escalate things and you've learned how to de-escalate people. And so in our marriage, I've done that with him. I have tried to make sure he doesn't escalate too much, because I know that since he's an escalator by nature and I'm a suppressor by nature. Again, neither one the healthiest, right? But hopefully this is helping somebody just by complete vulnerability here. So I have always said I can't escalate, because if I escalate with an escalator, we're gonna be knocking boots, and I'm not talking about the good kind. Like there's gonna be, it's gonna be fireworks, and that doesn't feel safe for me. So one of the things that I've been working on doing is trying to express my anger in a way that feels safe for me, and that Jason gives me a safe place to do that. Because it doesn't feel safe for me if I'm angry and then he gets angry. Does that make sense? And so sometimes I just like, let me be angry. Let me feel this emotion and see that I can do it, and see that I can be safe even if the person I'm angry with is you. And that's taken a lot for me to admit here on this podcast, by the way. A real therapist would have a heyday with this. Um, but and my husband's doing an incredible job. And what's interesting is, even though he's wired to be an exploder and I'm wired to be a suppressor, there are a lot of ways that he has suppressed a lot, and we're working with him. And not that either of us need work, but it's just God loves us enough to not ever let us stay alone and stuck, right? And we've been married for almost 28 years, and I would like to think that part of that is that we've refused to quit working on ourselves and together to just continue to have the healthiest marriage that we can. Because the things that we're going through in our 50s are very different than the things that we experienced in our 30s and 40s. And what we both know about both each other and ourselves is just a lot different than what we knew, when we were younger. And there's constantly things that I'm like, ooh, I don't love that I do that. I got to work on that crap, because, I thought that I was better than that. I thought I was past that. I thought I was whatever. But if you were someone that grew up in a home where regulating emotions to one degree or the next, let me give you another example. If you were raised in a household where, let's just say the mother, for example, and I'm not going to say it's usually this way, but I would think this would be more than the other, but the mother froze out your father. And by the way, if you were raised in a household where there was a parent missing, then there's a whole lot there too, right? But if there was the silent treatment, if there was no talking, you learn things just by growing up in those sorts of households. And it's interesting how then you carry those into adulthood and they are showing up in your business. You cannot tell me they are not. And so being an aggressor versus a suppressor, neither one of those. is healthy. An exploder versus an imploder, neither one is healthy. And if you are like myself and you like to think that being the imploder is the safer one, is the more taking the high road one, which is what I was thinking for years. Let me just tell you that continuing to suppress and suppress years on top of years, on decades on top of decades, the body does keep score. And you may think that just continuing to push down all your thoughts, opinions, and emotions may be better than the person you're married to or the person that you grew up with, that was an exploder and a hot mess or whatever. You may, like I did at one time, think that that's taking the higher road. It's not taking the higher road because internally your body is still dealing with it. It has to come out somewhere, somehow. And so, I think that a lot of business owners overall, I know this is going to be a broad statement, but I just think that a lot of small business owners, we're in a constant state of fight or flight mode. And when you're in that, your emotional reactivity isn't always the greatest because even small hiccups in your business can feel like huge ones. And so if you are someone who finds yourself, getting your day completely derailed by one comment on social media, like get to the bottom of it, honestly, get some healing, figure out where that's coming from and how you can shift your thinking about it and how you deal with things to come at it from a healthier perspective. So, friends, I hope that this series was beneficial to you in some way. And again, not a therapist, not a professional, not a counselor, not a trauma expert. I have gone through my fair share of stuff in life, just like every single one of you who is listening. I do feel like the Lord has given me the ability to really help women get to the bottom of why they behave the way they behave. My book is called Fear is Not the Boss of You. And it was, I wrote that 6 years ago because it came out 5 years ago. So it was during the summer 6 years ago that I was writing that. And I've learned so much more, even in the 6 years since writing that book, about how things are showing up in business because of things that we just haven't dealt with and haven't gotten to the bottom of and haven't gotten healing for. And healing can look really different, by the way. Come here, Lola. I did say this on part one, but healing can look like therapy. Healing can look like sitting in a therapist's office, once a week for 6 months. Healing can also look like one Zoom call with an online therapist. And the Lord does it suddenly. Healing can also look like just praying in your bed at night and God just in a nanosecond taking care of something for you. One moment, please. Healing can look like a whole lot of different things. Apparently the boys are having people over tonight. And so my encouragement to you is if you are really serious about growing your business, and if you have been stuck or you have been hitting a threshold or you haven't been able to get past something or you just can't seem to do X, Y, or Z. Yes, if you have a business coach, even if I'm your business coach, there are strategies we can teach you. There are tactics and procedures and everything else. But at the end of the day, it is really your mindset and your emotional intelligence that, if good and high and healed and whole and healthy, will allow you to get past the things you're bumping up against in business. But you've got to allow the work to be done, because I can give you all the marketing strategy in the world. I can get you set up on Equip 360 software. I can teach you how to be posting on social media. I can teach you how to come up with an email list, come up with freebies for email lists. I can teach you how to put an offer out into the world that people will buy. But if in your heart you still feel like you don't deserve it, if you still feel like nobody can do it as good as you, like all of these things, I'm telling you, heal that stuff first and all the business stuff will come. It really will. So I'm going to pray for you, and then we're going to finish up here, and hopefully the dogs aren't going to bark at any more groomsmen coming in. So, Father God, I just thank you for this time together on this 3-part series. And Lord, I pray that if there was any knuckleheaded thing that I said, Lord, that you would just almost let the listeners have like an amnesia to that line. They would just forget about it. Instead, they would hone in on the truth that was specific to their situation. Lord, I just am overall just I want freedom for these men and women. I want them to get the freedom that they need and that they really deserve on this side of heaven, so that they can live and run their business and raise their kids and have relationships out of a really free place. Sorry, we've got more groomsmen. And so, Lord, I just pray just for every single listener here. I pray, Lord, that you would bring something back that would be meaningful, impactful, and change their lives. I pray, Lord, just for blessings on every single listener. I pray, Lord, just for freedom, and I pray for impact and income on this side of heaven. And I thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, friends, will you do me a hot solid? If you enjoyed this series, would you let me know on YouTube? Would you share this on Instagram or share it with a friend or something? Somebody that you know that's in business or been trying to start something and just can't get it off the ground. That would help me, and it would be so beneficial. And let me know if you would like to see me or hear me do another series. I've been thinking about contemplating doing a series about money mindset again, which I've talked about in the past, but it's been several years since I've really focused on it. And how so many times we get stuck in business because we've got issues with money. And we think we don't, but I'm like, but wait a second, you're giving it all away. But wait a minute, you won't spend it all. But wait a minute, you can't seem to get past 50K a year. But wait a minute, you like there's a when I see, money things popping up over and over and over, there's always a root there. There's something there. So let me know if that's something you would like me to do next. And as always, I appreciate so much you being here. Love you, friends. Bye bye. Easton, I thought I told Brock. Tell everybody. Come through the garage. Does nobody listen to your mother?